Hey, good morning. Thank you for having me today. In our talk today, I want to talk about unlocking data value by balancing new technologies and old. I want to share our journey in both integrating the old and new technologies and where we're able to find new opportunities and capabilities. Now, one idea I want to share over the past day or so is I saw a fantastic and almost magical technology being displayed here at the Spark Summit. And we actually were able to put a lot of that magic into production within 6 months from POC to end and putting it into production in a highly regulated and secure environment that meets our clients' highest expectations. So when I'm talking about here, I'm talking about not theory, I'm talking about practicalities of what we're able to do. So first off, I'd like to maybe start off with who we are. We're FIS Global. For those who are not familiar with us, which is probably many of you, we're actually one of the largest global FinTech companies in the world. Now, what is financial technology? It's business to business. It's serving banks and credit unions, providing financial services and capabilities to these industries. So think of it in this way that in our mobile client, when you do remote data capture, some of that technology is being provided by a FinTech. Now, we actually have a very rich ecosystem of products and services that we build and provide for banking. And an interesting aspect about this is when we install or we provide our software to our clients, our customers is the banks themselves, and we have thousands of banks that we serve. And of them, they have millions and millions of customers. And a very interesting aspect of this is sometimes we're deploying software all at once to millions of customers. Myself, I actually represent part of the digital finance group, more specifically for our mobile client, the mobile banking application, and of the data and analytics section, where we do a lot of crunching and building of data analytics. Now, I want to think all of us here, we're actually all on the same journey together. We're all agents of transformation, from engineers to leaders, executives. We're all coming into this new age of data and transformation. And we're going on this journey together. Over time, our expectations have actually shifted in the way that we think and interact with technology. And I'll show you some examples here as we start talking about that. And our capabilities and how we actually serve our market has also changed and expanded. So I actually want to share in our journey some of the things that we've learned along that way to actually successfully put new technologies into place, like Apache Spark. If we think about the etymology of the word bank, it plays to our story. The original etymology really talks about how back originally you had accountants and the people who were counting the money, they would sit on an oak bench and they had a very formal system. And very recently, it was a very formal experience to interact with your bank. It's only changed rapidly in the last 10 years, where all of a sudden this experience has just become very personal, very intimate. And our expectations of that technology have become very intimate and it's just been a very short amount of time. Now, this slide really starts talking about something that we intuitively probably understand, that almost everybody's doing digital banking. So 60% of the US population is digital banking. Now, I like to joke, I don't know what the other 40% people are doing, but we can definitely see that one of the most influential sectors that banks are looking at is the millennial. They're huge in this section. So it's a very interesting market, particularly when you look at a data problem such as what we have. Now, these are two of the largest banking institutions that we serve. And if you look at the interaction here, we generate 6 times more digital interactions or data than what is being produced at the branch or through ATM transactions. On another bank, it's even higher, 9 times. So the amount of data that we actually process through the mobile experience is phenomenally higher than what you expect just on the normal brick and mortars experience. Now, if we like to think, just for a couple moments, we kind of walk back and we think about 10 years ago, right? Think about the names, the products that we're using 10 years ago. What was XM radio was popular, BlackBerry, Blockbuster. I mean, these were very popular names that almost we don't even think about today. Now we have Netflix, Amazon, Uber, Facebook, iPhone, Google. And even when we start thinking about our mobile phone experience 10 years ago, it's quite a bit different. It's quite a bit different because now we're able to interact with the experience in a very intimate, personal way. And that is actually how our expectations have changed. The nature of our data has also changed. In the same amount of time, just imagine, the way we interact with our data, the way we process our data, those expectations have also changed. 10 years ago, the idea of us just counting up the numbers, counting the beans, just counting records, that's probably very common. But now we actually look for the scenarios of machine learning. We look to how we can learn about our customers. We look for those extra bits of information that exist between the data points that we can get extra understanding. And the Uberization of retail bank is very difficult when you take it from that aspect. It's mostly because we have a lot of existing systems that exist inside banks today that provide and support the business in very important ways. And we have a lot of thinking about those legacy products that I'm sure in our own industries, that if we're to share this journey together, we recognize that when we talk about how do we do new types of systems versus the existing types of systems. Our personal belief is that data is the key from getting us from here to there. Some of the challenges that we have is just our first one, technical debt, right? The best practices that we thought about 10 years ago are no longer the best practices of today. And they were fantastic ideas when we first thought of them 10 years ago. In our own case, when we started building our mobile client application, we applied those best practices to our business and built from them. And then later on realized, hey, we have to start rethinking exactly what we're doing. Our second, when you have these practices in play, you can get a lot of internal and external resistance to making those changes. When you say, I want to use a whole new technology stack, there's going to be some resistance. One of our most important products at FIS is security, compliance, and regulation. And it's one of our most important aspects that we always make sure that we implement into every single product. And with that, it raises the bar for the types of products and the type of technology that we can go and use. When we started on our digital journey, we said to ourselves, let's make some goals. Now, of these goals, I would say our third one, transform and grow data competency, is our most important one and the one that we have gone back and expanded on most. So to dig down into the digital journey, I actually want to put into the aspect of the 3 V's, which we know from Nathan Marr's book on big data, where he describes the 3 different aspects of how data interacts with us: volume, velocity, and variety. Now, when we first started down our road, volume was our first case that we actually hit upon, and it was our first big challenge. And I'll share with you kind of like how we expanded from that challenge. The amount of data that we were transacting, we handle as much as the top 3 institutions in the United States do. We deal with the billions of activities, and these graphs are really designed to translate that the growth that in 2014 was growing 15, 25%, sometimes doubling per quarter. And it was going at such a high rate that our legacy systems weren't able to keep up anymore. That the operational problems that we're beginning to encounter were becoming severe because we had developed code that would work in a certain amount of time, and then suddenly in 2-3 months, it was no longer optimized. We were getting, hey, you need to go fix this. And the problem got even worse. Because when we looked year over year, in the next year, it was double what the year was before. And it was continuing up. So we had to make changes. So when I first talk about volume, one of the first things that we did personally was we approached NewSQL, which is a big data technology, and we used that, MPP databases. So we conquered the volume problem by bringing an MPP database. Now as an enterprise, these are usually available to you. So they're very easy to go to. They're going to cover about 90% of what you actually need. But there's also the 10% that they don't cover. So I also want to talk that you also have other options when you can't meet the full spectrum. And you can bring in Apache Spark. And Apache Spark, by reaching out and using Hive, you can also build a data system to actually accomplish the volume as well. Now there's pros and cons to both approaches. Pros of the MPP database, you can easily get from point A to point B, move on with what's important at that point, and come back later. What is a pro of Apache Spark is you can definitely engineer and become very intimate with your data and build an even more optimized system than what you could build in another case. Usually when we're given patterns and we're told, go use Apache Spark, we're not really told how to go do it. In the Lambda architecture, we talk about being immutable and just doing inserts. So what we chose to use was we chose to use this traditional BI star pattern for laying out our structures on disk. That's because you have lots of experience in the industry. You have people that you can easily get and hire who can implement on this. And the pattern is proven over time to be very successful for laying out and being able to retrieve data in this way. We also took the very unorthodox approach when we went to the serving layer for the Lambda architecture, where we also use MPP databases. However, this is a good example of where aggregate tables being in the serving layer, they didn't really fit into that. They really started showing us where these systems really were not optimized because while we could create the system to answer certain types of data, we couldn't answer all types of data. And that's where we ourselves are actually moving to move this layer actively into Apache Spark so that we can actually address our business and our customers' needs for what they're actually asking of us. As we go into our next aspect, which is velocity, this was where we started having to talk about how we're increasing the amount of data that we're having. Because when we looked at 2014 and 2015, we were also looking at how do we redesign our mobile client application to start enriching the amount of data points. When I talked about changing expectations, when we first wrote the mobile client, we were more concentrated on the data that's coming off of it. It's going to help us bill our customers and show them the basics of how their business, of how the mobile client is working inside for them. When we are thinking in 2014, we're thinking in terms of what are the other data points that we can get to enhance the experience and create even greater sets of data. So when we talked about operation, that we're having a problem operationally, we did the first go-to as what an enterprise is going to go to. We took the ETL system and we just doubled up the resources and we said that's probably the approach. However, we found that it was only a 5% increase. So we said this is probably not a really good approach. We're going to have to try a different approach. And this is where we actually said, let's go get Apache Spark and let's do a proof of concept against it. The proof of concept for us was actually very successful. On the further right, you can see what our current ETL system was doing. And when we reached out to do even more with it, the price was extremely high just to bring it up and put another system in place. The next we can see is just one node of Apache Spark easily outdoing that traditional system. And then we looked at, hey, what if we added more nodes? So we put 8 nodes on it. Okay, so now we're up to 3 million records per second. And then we said, let's do 20, and now we're up to 8 million records per second. You can see that the potential for horizontal scaling was phenomenal. And one of the partners that we reached out to was Databricks. Because as an enterprise, you have to meet sometimes these higher requirements that your customers are asking. And we started forming a partnership with Databricks to help meet both of those requirements that we needed to meet. Now, Apache Spark is magical, almost as magical as the Pegasus itself, but it's a technology and it's not the solution. So when we talk about looking to principles such as Lambda Architecture, even the star schema, which is established already, these are ways to actually help enable the technology to make a complete solution. So some high-level bonuses of Apache Spark is, whereas previously when you had to go out and use a big data solution, it was Hadoop. And with Hadoop, you really had to focus in on how you're going to write the code at a very low level to create and get the most of the system. With Apache Spark, because of it's a high-level abstraction and it's focused on separation of data, it also allows us to focus in on what we're doing with the data. And then think of this as an added advantage of Apache Spark. Is very often in enterprises, what happens is because you get many of these departments, they're always trying to collect data. And because they're using systems like the normal databases, they get stuck inside these databases. But with Apache Spark, we're able to separate compute from storage. And with this advantage, now we're able to take this storage and be able to reuse it across different contexts. When we implemented Apache Spark, we actually implemented it to facilitate our batch layer and our speed layer. And over the course of this time, I'd like to say that we're very successful. We were originally talking in the billions, and recently, around August, we actually put out our mobile client update, and we had a doubling of data and then a tripling of data that's just going off, just expanding radically. And it shifted really about how we want to think about how data processing works. Previously, we had thought in terms of record counting to monitor and build our system. And now all of a sudden, we now think in terms of velocity, as in like how fast is the business going and how fast can we react. And with a platform such as Spark, we're able to dynamically create and add to the infrastructure and address those needs dynamically. Our last use case is a little bit more fun. So the variety use case is really when we started discovering more capability inside from just using this to be using Apache Spark to start addressing the more exciting. So that's actually where I will jump in and share some of the work that we did. Now, I want to give you some context as we go through here. Let's bring that up. So this is a very simple logistic regression to predict user churn. Actually, I'm going to have to change the way I'm. Give me just a little bit. Change my display. Perfect. So as we go through this logistical model was actually created by a very recent hire just out of college. And he only took about 2 days to actually put this together. So you start seeing that not only is the technology very powerful, but it's also very easy to implement. We're able to go create a logistical regression, something that 10 years ago was not actually possible to actually do. At the same time, we also looked at, hey, there's also a wonderful capability that we're actually able to go off into the market. They're actually able to go off into the market and actually find other data sources to expand our data story. That other things, particularly with a mobile app, that we have the Twitterverse, we have sentiment analysis, and we have this ability to go out and get other data points to actually enhance the data experience for our customer. So with this, we're not actually using our own mobile app here, but for demonstration purposes, we used another one to show about how quickly we're actually able to go off into other data sources and start compiling them. So while we are doing that, we'll probably return over to the data regression and see how well that has gone, because this one takes a little bit of time to start going through. Oh, it does look like we do not have a cluster going. All right, I will return to that in just a moment. All right, so one of the things I'd like to do is I'd like to slam, in a sense, I'm going to kind of slam all these concepts together. A couple years ago in the enterprise, we're being told that ETL was no longer a thing that we had to worry about, that it was basically gone, and that we didn't have to worry about data transformation anymore. But what we're seeing now as trends is that ETL isn't actually dead. And the idea of dashboards and the things that we're traditionally doing in enterprises are not dead. But in fact, actually what is happening is that we're actually getting more use cases around data exploration and machine learning that we're actually able to apply and actually expand capability and change the expectations of our customers and how we're actually delivering data. I like to say that we're putting it and slamming together all of our concepts because principles that we learn are very important to implement in these technologies. The star schema, the BI patterns that we learned, the Lambda architecture is important to still implement. And some of the benefits that we have found overall was that when we merge these technologies, it's not impossible. In fact, very often when I'm in different meetings or even the meetups, people will be demonstrating Apache Spark, and a lot of people will be the naysayers and say, well, yes, it goes fast, but it's not being accurate or it's not doing this. Well, balancing the systems and realizing that you have power in the entire pipeline, you can merge these two together, and it is very possible to create unique new scenarios. You're able to find data and exploit its potential, and you're able to use these new types of technologies to solve big problems. Now, this was a little bit about our back end to support our product, Metrics Intelligence, which actually provides the user experience for data analytics for our customers. And actually, if I could, I would love to actually dig down and start talking about all the wonderful additional enterprise scenarios that we found by actually using Apache Spark. But in the interest of time, we will actually go see if we can. It does not look like we have a cluster going. All right. Well then, thank you very much for your time. I'd like to extend some thank you very much for having me. I'd like to extend a thank you to my team who has supported us in this journey. And I'd also like to extend a thank you to Databricks, who, when we created a partnership and we talked to them about our enterprise requirements, responded very quickly, did a lot of work on our behalf to actually raise the entire Apache Spark product to be able to meet higher enterprise requirements and make it available for our production. Thank you.